Hey guys, welcome back to part 2, building animated GIF me. This video we're going to be walking through writing tests for the application, and then we're going to get it deployed to a DigitalOcean server, and we'll be off to the races. So yeah, I think we're going to start by just building out our basic tests for the GIFs section. We don't really care about testing the registration. It is pretty standard and it's all devise. And we haven't really customized that, and so the devise tests that are already built into devise, we can trust that those do what they need to do, so we can work on writing tests for our own code here. Now, we want to write a test probably for the basic index at the very beginning, and we've already got that through our scaffold generator. So we have this GiftsController test, and we can run our Rails test controllers, GiftsController test, and we'll run the specific line 8. And this test should pass. There shouldn't be any reason why it wouldn't, but we want to just make sure that it does. And we get an error because our fixtures users.email is an issue. So this users.email, as you can see here, we just have one at email. So we have no values in here by default, and we just need to fill out fixtures or delete them. So we're going to do first name, user, last name, 1, first name, user, last name, 2. Something simple like that should get us back and running. And unexpected token at my text under GIF HTML ERB 2. So, oh yeah, here is, so anytime you see like my text, that's typically something that the scaffold generators made for you. This is something kind of interesting because we have a fixture, but it needs to actually store the information that Shrine would have in the database. And if you want to see that ever, you can open up a record in your database like GIF last.image data, and this will just be, a text column in here with a string of JSON. So one option we might have is we could grab this and then use that somehow as a template for building this. But the other thing that we can do is look through the Shrine testing docs. So one thing they recommend here right away is that you should use the memory storage for speed in writing your tests. So what we can do is go to our shrine.rb file and say if rails.m.test will require memory storage, and we can actually move this down to be with our other one right here. So that's, a step in the right direction. It seems like when you first try to test file attachments, not being promoted to permanent storage. This is because your tests are likely set up to be wrapped inside database transactions, and that doesn't work with Shrine callbacks. Specifically, Shrine uses after commit callbacks for promoting and deleting attached files. This means if your tests are wrapped inside transactions, Shrine actions will happen only after those transactions commit. So basically, it's saying, you can't use transactional fixtures to do this. So Rails transactional fixtures. And this is something, I'm not sure if this will be required. Transactional fixtures. I'm not sure if this is something that's on by default in Rails. So we may not run into that issue. So let's keep looking in here for our test data. This is the one that we're most concerned with. So here we go. We want to avoid expensive operations such as file processing and metadata extraction. We can create a helper method that will create attached file data for us and use that with our fixtures and factories. So cool. This looks like a nice little test data class or module that we can use. Gives us some image data, and we can probably use this to create the image data for our fixture. And yeah, you can see an example of that in a fixture. So image data would just become a call to this. So let's go into our test helper. And normally we have like a support folder or something inside of our test folder. And so that one is something we might want to create. We can definitely just paste this in right here. If we wanted, that would be the easiest option, but it's not a bad idea to say, let's go and require relative support / shrine. So let's make a directory called test support and then test support shrine.rb, and we'll define this module in there. And then we can try updating our fixture to use this instead. All right. So now let's try running our test and see what happens. Great. So this is basically just saying, hey, you need a file called testfilesimage.jpg as your test data in order to use this uploaded file method that we just pasted in. So what we'll do is we'll go create a JPEG for it and use that. And I've actually got some GIFs that we could probably just use instead. So why don't we do that? Let's make directory test files, and we will open test files and paste in here example.gif. Okay, so we'll use that example GIF for our example here. Example.gif. Let's look up the GIF mime type, because as you can see here, we have that right here. We'll have example.gif and image/JPEG is for JPEG, but we want image/GIF, it looks like, for GIFs. So that should be simple enough. We'll try this now, see what happens. Run our Rails test and set derivatives. Okay, so set derivatives for shrine attacher. You know, we're not actually using the derivatives plugin or anything for storing different versions that you might crop of the image, so we can skip that. Unexpected token at some YAML, it looks like. So because we're using a text column, I would think that would be just fine. It says use attacher.data in case of Postgres JSON B column, but that's not what we're using. So maybe that's something we need to change as well, but not sure. I guess we can try that, but we can also put in a buy bug there and poke around and see what's up. Yeah, so let's do that. So let's say buy bug, and we'll print out attacher column data, attacher.data. And so column data looks just like the Ruby hash converted to a JSON string. So nothing fancy there. And we probably can, double check that with a hash, and that's a string. So, that's pretty straightforward. Something we've got here is off a little bit because of that. So we need to do a little bit of debugging and figure out what's up. So if we run this test, we're seeing YAML output, but it looks like JSON is what we need. So I'm assuming that this is being converted to YAML and then loaded directly into the database because it's a text column, and then we're outputting it into a YAML file. Not entirely sure, but that's clearly what's happening here. So I'm trying to think if maybe we need to convert this from just the regular ERB output in a YAML file to a string, and if we wrap it with single quotes, that should contain any double quotes that are inside of it. So maybe that will do the trick for us. And it looks like it did. So that's one of those little nuances that you have to understand with some of the fixture stuff. It's kind of a little bit tricky, and I actually went off screen and was like playing around with this in here just to see, if I change something in the YAML, how does that reflect in the image data column in the database? And it seems like that did the trick. So now that we have those, we actually should have working fixtures and our test should pass. So that's great. The next test that we need to work on, and we're just going to work through all of these tests here, is should be able to get new. And that one actually should not pass, and we do not want it to pass actually. It should redirect to the sign-in page. Should not be able to get new if signed out. So this should be a redirect and assert redirected to the new user session path. So now if we run this test, I believe that should pass, and it does. So that's good, but we need another test for a user who's signed in. Should be able to get new if signed in. So in this case, we want the assert success response here, but we need to actually log a user in. And so to do that, we need to go to the devise page on GitHub, and we're going to grab the information for that. Now this has moved recently from Plataformatex repo because they're no longer going to be maintaining this, and it's been transferred over to Heart Combo. And so that is going to be the new maintainer of that. And we just need to go into the test helpers, and I believe we need to include these integration helpers because we're using Rails 6, and that can actually go into our test helper folder or file, and we can paste that in. So let's get that done and see how this goes. So now we need to test line 19, and we will get the error because we're not signed in. And what this is going to allow us to do is sign in a user. So what we can do is sign in users 1, so our first fixture, our user fixture, and our test should pass, and it does. And we can start working our way through the rest of these. So should create GIF, gifs.count. This is only going to work if the user signed in. So sign in users 1 for this. We can have a simple test to make sure that does not work if you are not signed in. Should redirect if create GIF but not signed in. So very similar to this one above. We want to assert redirect to the new user session path. It really doesn't matter exactly where we redirect them to, but this is helpful to make sure that this didn't redirect to the GIF URL, for example. So if we were to go and make a post request in this test on line 25, we want to make sure that that test will redirect us to the sign-in page. Then for line 31, we can run that one, and because we're signed in, that one should work correctly, and it does. So these tests are just kind of testing both sides of the situation, and because we're requiring users to be authenticated for new, create, edit, update, and destroy, kind of need both sides of the coin for each of those tests. So what we'll do is we'll probably just grab this test right here and start going through all of these. Now, test for line 41 should show GIF is pretty straightforward and should just work because we don't have any unique requirements for that one. Anybody publicly can view that GIF, and that's as easy as it is. So this one should redirect if edit GIF but not signed in. We want to do one for update GIF, and should redirect if destroy GIF but not signed in. So we'll go up here and change this one to the request for the edit GIF. This one for the patch we can put here. Should update GIF, and actually these need sign in users 1, should update, should destroy. Each one of those will need that, and we can grab this delete for that one. So let's try running all of the tests in this controller, and we get 12 tests, 24 assertions, and all of them are passing. So now we've tested basically the minimal requirements that all of our GIFs are available publicly, and then to create, edit, and update and destroy, those require user to be signed in. So we're covering all of those bases pretty well. And we already have this GIF image data being submitted, which is nice. So it should actually be going through the Shrine portion for those tests, because the image data, that JSON information, is what gets sent over to update the image. And actually, that's one of those cases too that like we could test this and say, hey, on the update, you shouldn't be allowed to pass in the image data. And we definitely don't require that, or don't allow. Let's see, we allow it right now, but we probably won't want to remove it because we just removed the form field before. But we might want to actually remove that, so you can't edit a GIF without manually. You could manually do it right now by adding the field in. But it would be better if we go into our GiftsController and we change this permit list. So if the action name is create or edit, we can add in that item. So in this case, Rails. Let's Google Rails action name. I believe this is a method name that you can use to just check to see what the action name is. Yeah, so action name should give you like new, create, or whatever that's being called. So what we could do is we could have permitted equals TagList, permitted plus equals image, if action name equals new. So that would just make this work like so, and we could say permitted with the asterisk to expand the array into arguments for the permit method, and that would work. So our test might actually break now when we make a patch. No, it doesn't. But those should not be permitted. And we could write other, Unity tests for this too to make sure that the permitted params for that are not allowed. So that's not like a huge deal for us to worry about. We know it works, and our tests can be a little bit more, perfect for those situations. This is something where we don't need to pass in the user ID or the image data, but we can pass in, say, the tag list instead. So we'll have new tag, and we can have at gif.reload assert equal new tag at gif, I gotta spell it right, and assert that the tag list matches new tag in that case. So let's run our tests again, and that should be an array. And there we go. So, this is one of the cases when you're updating a record, you want to kind of make sure that the update actually saves and that the controller doesn't necessarily just redirect you, because it might redirect you for authentication. And so if you do too generic of a redirect test, like just asserting a response redirect, then you end up in a situation where you may accidentally write a test that you think works and does not. So this helps. We don't really need to verify this, because the only way that we would get redirected to the GIF URL is if the GIF was successfully updated. So we have to keep in mind some of those things. It doesn't hurt to add those extra assertions, but they will slow our test down if we're testing a bunch of things and asserting things that we don't really need to test. And the only way we can get to that URL is through a successful update. So that'll be good enough for us. So we can go and write a test for probably another one very similar to this for the show for the users. So let's do that. Test controllers, users, controller, test.rb, users, controller, we'll have user, users1 should get show, and we'll go to users URL at user and assert that that is successful. And actually, Rails test controller, users controller test. Now, this one couldn't find a user without an ID, so that's an interesting thing. Users URL is actually plural when it should have been singular, so that fixes that. We could also do something like an assert content on the page to check for the user's name. Rails assert content, assert select, I believe, is what we need to use for that. And that might help if we wanted to make sure it rendered the correct page, for example. So assert select could be useful in that case. We could say assert select at user.name gifts, which I believe users show.html.erb is what we have here at the top, and we do. So if we run our test again, we should see that that matches. Now we get a syntax error here for Nokogiri, and this is actually what we're looking for, an H1 with that content, not a tag with that. And by doing that, we now have an H1 that matches and our assertion. So that's just a basic one. We might want to put the test for the catch-all in the GiftsController. I'm guessing the GiftsController test is probably the best place to put this, just because it is rendering the GiftsController. So just because we're using a different route instead of /gifs, we're using /whatever. We can use still the controller test for that because it's in the same controller at the end of the day. Renders catch all. So in this case, we want to do that route, and I forget the name that we called that route. We called it random GIF. So we'll get random GIF URL and the, what do we call that? Routes. We called the parameter tag. So I believe the way we do this is we say tag and we say hello or something, or test, doesn't really matter, and we should assert response success. So if we give it some random thing like test in the URL, it should succeed. And it does. Well, actually, we ran the wrong test file, so we haven't confirmed that for sure yet. Let's do GiftsController. And there we go. So those tests are working. We can do some more tests around the models themselves. So if we want to do a test on the GIFs and say test can be assigned a list of tags, we can test our integration with the tag list is access taggable on. So we can say gif.new tag list 1, 2, 3 gif equals, and assert equal or something. Let's say, what do we want to do? So if we were to do this, I'm assuming it's going to spit out a tag list like so. If we were to call tag list, so let's say Rails test models gifs test, and it does pass. So this is really converting that string from the params into an array for us, and we're just confirming that that is matching. The other test that we really care about here is can be assigned an image, and this is one where we're going to need to look at the Shrine test docs for it, because we want to upload a file. In this case, we have unit tests, and let's see, maybe we don't even need to do that, because let's see, so I guess you can photo create image, file open, test files image. So we could do that in our test, and you could say gif create test files, and ours is called example.gif, and then we can assert that little things in here, I guess. Assert equal gif.mime type matches image/gif. We'll try running that test, and undefined method mime type, and that would be because we need to call gif.image.mime type. So we got nil back. That's interesting. We don't have it at least setting those things correctly for us. That could actually be related to our setup, potentially, but that seems not quite correct. So let's go open up our database and just grab the first image mime type. Yeah, so GIF last image mime type. Okay, so for us, that was definitely not working right. So let's take a look and see what we've got here. So image mime type to equal /png, because let's see what our extension does. Extension, this should be GIF test models. It looks like that one must have passed, because the assert got 3 assertions and 1 failure. So I'm guessing that one does pass. So we could comment this out and see. Yep. So something is not extracting our mime type correctly. And it seems like it's extracting it just fine normally. So what if we do this in the terminal? So this is how I debug sometimes. Say gif.create image file open test files. Ooh, is that? Yeah, maybe that's fine. Let's double check. ls test files, example.gif. So that is the path. Example.gif, read binary, gif.image, and that also had the MIME type set to nil. So that's interesting. It's not immediately setting the MIME type for us. And maybe that is because we're missing a plugin or something. So let's take a look at the docs one more time. Let's go to guides. Getting started. Cached attachment data. Restore cache data. Maybe we'll look at the plugins. Processing, derivatives, metadata, determine MIME type. Aha, so this plugin is probably what we're missing. So let's go to shrine.rb, shrine.rb in initializers, and we'll add shrine.plugin.determine MIME type. And now let's run our test again. Okay, now it's passing. So sometimes you will discover bugs in your code because of your tests like that, which is really, really, really good. So we can go through some of these other, some of these other plugins and determine if we maybe want to have some of these. You can re-extract metadata from an uploaded file. I don't think we need that. Add metadata, custom metadata, doesn't really matter. Infer extension for the uploaded location based on the MIME type of the file. So this is most useful if you're using remote URLs. And this is maybe a really, really good feature for us to add. So you can upload a file through a URL, and that would be really awesome because honestly, like that is how I ended up, grabbing those images in the first place. I'd find them somewhere else and paste in a link, and this would allow us to actually go and create images a lot easier that way. So that would be really nice to have as a feature. So let's look at adding this plugin. So let's grab remote URL, shrine.rb again. We'll go paste in shrine.plugin there. And then we're going to want that infer extension as well. The mini MIME gem will be used, but you can choose different infer. Do we have any of these already installed? So let's check our gem file.lock file. We have mini MIME from Capybara and the mail gem. And looks like that's what we'll use. That makes sense. If we've already got it, we might as well use it. So, okay. So then it looks like to use this, we'll just assign remote URL or image remote URL. So I guess we can use the image remote URL option in our form if we would like to. Otherwise, we can have the file upload. So let's take a look at any of these. Signature, calculate a hash from file content. This hash can be used as a checksum or just as a unique signature for the uploaded file. That's kind of cool. That would allow us to prevent, duplicates from being uploaded. It's pretty neat. Dimensions is really nice as well. That's cool. So maybe let's grab that. By default, it uses the fast image gem. Trying to avoid new dependencies. So that one's going to require another gem. So I don't really want to use that right away. Let's just leave that out. Unless I guess we could use Mini Magic or Ruby Vips, which gem file lock. Vips. Image processing. Do we have that gem? gem file, image processing. So for resizing avatars and other things, you typically will have the image processing gem that the Shrine creator also made. That might be something we end up using, and then having Ruby VIPs or something powering that, where we could just use that as well for this. This doesn't seem too crucial for us to have the image dimension, so let's go ahead and skip that one and just move on from here. So this is kind of cool that you can say, hey, is this text, audio, video, or an image based upon the MIME type? That's really, really nice. Might be useful for things. For us, we always expect it to be images. In the future, if we add videos, this might be useful. So we'll leave that one out and not worry about it too much. Let's go to the GiftsController and let's add in here the remote image. Actually, we want it here. Remote image URL. So that permitted parameter would only be available on new. Our gifs form.html.erb will need a field for that, so we can have our file field. And I wonder now if we should, I wonder if we're going to have, or if this will allow, no, this should be fine. So let's do, text field for remote image URL, and maybe we'll have our placeholder on that. And this will say, or upload a GIF. So we can kind of just change the design of our form for the new GIF a little bit accordingly. So we'll log in and we will see now we have a URL to GIF or upload a GIF. So we can choose between those options and hopefully that will work. All right, so here's the GIF I love and want to use. So we'll say computer, headphones, kid, I don't know, create GIF, and nil location provided, can't build URI. So let's look at gif.image data, which is nil. So it didn't submit anything or didn't receive anything. And that could be because it wasn't permitted. So let's check here. Unpermitted parameters, image, remote image URL. And actually, I just realized we've done our mistake in the controller here. So when we said if action is new, that should be if action is create, because that is required. And then this also brings up a question for validations. Validation on our model. So this is something that is important for us to validate that it exists. And I guess we can say the image data could be something we validate on. So if we go to our gif.rb, we can have validates image data presence is true. So if you were to try and upload this, let's say at gif.destroy, so we'll get rid of that one we just did, but we can try it again. Remote image URL for GIF. Okay. So maybe we need to restart our Rails server because we've added those new plugins. Try this one more time. And now that that's booted up, nope. Remote image URL for GIF. Let's check out that plugin real fast. So source remote URL. Shrine attacher. The plugin will add name remote image remote URL. So we're calling the name wrong here. So that should be in our controller. Image remote URL. And our form should have image remote URL. All right, so let's grab this GIF URL again. We'll go back and try this again, refresh, so we have the new field name, and we'll submit it, and voila, it uploaded just fine. So this is really great, but what happens if we submit 2 of these items? So if we submit this phone GIF and the kid, it looks like it's going to take precedence using that URL that we got. So that's fine with me. It doesn't really matter. We don't expect you to select 2 of them. And if you did, it's kind of a weird situation. So if you did, that's on you. But this works just fine. So that's good. We can also check here to make sure that, we can have a validation for tags. So we want to make sure that there are at least some tags for our models. And if we want to, it might be a little bit easier to even TDD that just to make our tests, because we're not real sure how this is going to work. So if we go to our GIF model test, test requires at least 1 tag, do at GIF, or we'll just say gif.new, assert not gif.valid, and assert that GIF, we want to assert that the GIF tags list or something has an error on it, or the GIF base. I'm not sure which property we want to use exactly, but we want to make sure that gif.new is not valid there. So we'll try this and see what happens. If it's not valid, that could also be because of other things. So let's put a buy bug in here and check this out. So gif.errors. Our errors are that the user must exist, and that's, relevant. So we could say users 1, but we'll intentionally leave out the tag list for our test going forward now. And then the other one is our image data, and that one is important, so we'll have that as well. So we'll say our image data is test data.image data. I don't know if we'll need to do anything with that. And now our test is failing. So we're passing in all the other things except for the tag list, and it's being marked as valid even though it should not be. So let's go and split and go to our gif.rb. And I know we can do a custom validation, validate tag list, validate has at least 1 tag, and we can say def has at least 1 tag, tags dot if tags dot size equals 0 or is less than 1, doesn't really matter. But less than 1 kind of matches at least 1 tag. So that's not a bad option. We can say errors.add tag list must have at least 1 tag. So we'll try that and see what happens. So gif.errors now is tag list must have at least 1 tag. All right, so now we can assert equal that our string for must have at least 1 tag is gif.errors tag list. So we want to make sure in our test that it's setting that validation to make sure that it requires that. Let's also say requires an image. So we'll have gif.new, user, users1, TagList will be test, and assert not gif.valid, and we can assert let's work on that one too. Let's just say, and actually this one's going to be, we did add the image data presence, so that should work for us. So let's try running that test. And as you can see, this one up in those errors above, this should be an array, because this is going to be, errors is always going to return an array because there might be multiple errors for one field. So that's something to keep in mind. gif.errors this time around should have image data should not be blank or whatever. gif.errors.full messages, image data cannot be blank. We can assert equal gif blank gif.errors image data. That should work for that. And interestingly, our tag list was giving an error for that one. Okay, actual can't be blank. So we'll do this here, which is what I expected, but I saw that it was just displaying error blank, but that I guess is in the details attribute. So that works. And like it's going, that specific test is going to actually set an error on the tag list as well, for some reason. And so that seems a little off, but we can make sure that that is handled. So maybe, yeah, let's look into that one and figure out why that is. So, oops, we'll run our test one more time. gif.errors tag list must have at least one tag. So potentially what we want to do is the tags that we're accessing here haven't been pre-processed before validation, I'm assuming, and they actually get done before commit or something after validations. So I'm guessing that is empty. And what we want to do is look for tag list not empty. And that maybe will work. And this is a little strange probably. So maybe we do if it's present, I guess. So the reason why this might be a little strange is actually if we say string of test as our tag, originally that's what it will be, but once it processes it, it'll actually turn it into an array. So we're going to make sure that whatever we do checks for at least one character in the string or one entry in the item. So I'm in the array. So I guess if we say test is present, an empty string would not be present, and an empty array is not present, but a array with one item should also be present. That should do the trick for us, and there may be a better way of validating this. But as long as as long as there are at least one tag, one character in the submitted string, which would assume, I believe, that there is at least one tag. This may need to get fixed in case there's maybe you just type in a comma for the has at least one tag. That could be an issue, but we'll run with this for now because we don't want to go too far into the weeds for all that, because we definitely could, but this is one of the things that, like, is really important when we get into some of this stuff. So yeah, here you can see that now by adding this validation, we've broken one of our GiftsController tests, and this is line 31. So let's go into the GiftsController test line 31. This one is not submitting a tag list, and it's submitting a user ID, but that's irrelevant. So we want to submit a tag list of test for this, and we don't really care if we have any post data for the GIF in the redirect option either, so we can get rid of that and clean things up. So now we have a better test suite running. We still have one failure. Create test number 34 on line 34. Post GIFs, image data, tag list. Let's go to our GiftsController and the create action. And in here, let's do a by bug and let's run our test suite. Oops, that's going to get us a little bit too many. So test controllers, GiftsController test, line 31, and we'll look at gif.valid, at gif.errors. Image data is blank. So it's submitting, yeah, and of course it is. So what we're doing here in our test submitting image data, we need to actually submit a file. So we need to submit image, and this is actually the file, Rails controller test post file. So we need to actually test a file upload here, and cool, fixture file upload. That's kind of neat. Rack test uploaded file new. Okay, this one looks pretty simple. I imagine that's what the Rails fixture thing helps you do, but I like how simple this is. So we can say file equals that, then we give it test files example.gif, image gif, and we'll submit the file. We'll see how that goes. Okay, test passed. Great. So that one works well, and we're testing with a file in that case. We could probably do a URL too, but we really don't want our test to hit the internet, so we maybe won't do that for that one. And now let's try running Rails test and seeing if all of our tests pass again. Great. So as you can see, like, by writing a handful of these tests, we've already teased out a bunch of issues that our code had that we didn't even notice before when we were testing, because we were just kind of doing some minimal stuff. So now we've added a bunch of edge cases and made sure that they work correctly in pretty much every case. But we need to go through and probably build out more of these as we discover bugs or whatever as other people use it. So probably I think the next step is to push this up to Git and put it in a Git repo and then deploy this to a server.